Okay, we're on the bench with Luke. Say hi, Luke.
Hello.
And we have the starter out of the car, and we've done a little bit of wire brushing on it. We actually already opened this where the brushes are, just to peek in. We put it back on to bring it here. We've done a little wire brushing around these screws to give ourselves a chance. Let's take a look at what we have. We have a Lucas starter, L-U-C-A-S. There is some corrosion and pitting that makes some of this hard to read. It is model 25550A, and that size is an M418G as in George. And this number here, V174, I don't know what that is. I believe this is a date code. So I have 4 and then 60, and I think that's a date code, that this is April of 1960 as a build. So it's a 61 car, we believe. It could have been built in 1960. So we think this is the original starter for the car. And then we have 12V, 12 volt. So I'm going to zoom in and see if I can get you some footage of that here a little bit better. We'll see what we get. So there we go. Lucas, you can see the pitting. 25550A, M418G, V174, and then there you can just barely see 4. Let's see if I can get you at an angle. And then a 60 for 60. It's almost all corroded away. And then 12 volt. So we think this is the original one. There is some pitting, but we are going to see if we can get this running again. All right, so let's talk about the parts of the starter. This is an electric motor it's a 12 volt motor that's used as a starter. So Mr. Luke, what do we have? We talked specifically about what makes it a starter. It has this on the end, the Bendix, right? So when it spins quickly, it throws this gear down into the ring gear, and it looks like we have an intact spring, and this spring is intact, so that's good. Then this part is the electric motor, and it has stator plates around the outside that are attached by this screw. Under this cover are the brushes, and on the back we have the contact for the electrical connection. The other contact grounds to the case of the starter. And inside we expect to find what? We expect to find an armature, and a commutator, and brushes, right? Okay, so you want to take it apart now? Cool. All right, let me back this video up. We'll zoom out a little. Okay. You go ahead. Start working on that.
What should I do a turn?
Counterclockwise. See how the nut's turning? You're gonna have to hold that nut. You hold it with your fingers probably. We've had this apart before, so this is unscrewing pretty easy. You probably don't have to take it all off. You can probably, that's enough, and maybe slip that band off the end. 2 hands. Set your screwdriver down. Cool. What do you see in there?
Bushings.
Brushes?
Nope. Yeah, brushes.
Okay, let's take a look. So inside there, we think that's the end of a brush right there. And there's a brush. And what's that shiny thing?
That's the armature?
That's the commutator. The brushes touch the commutator. So there are the brushes. So you could get to it and service the brushes right here. All right. Okay, so we've got the cover off, and there are springs in here, these little bands of metal. That is a little spring that pushes down on the brush and pushes it into the commutator. So we could grab that spring and hook it and pull the brushes out here, but we're not going to do that. A, the springs might be really brittle and we don't want to break them. And B, we're going to take this whole thing apart. We're not just servicing the brushes because it turns, but it's really hard to turn. It's pretty stiff. We know that there's a lot of play between the shaft, so we think the bushings are bad. And since this hasn't been driven in 40 years, there's no lubrication on these bushings, on these oil light bushings. So we're going to take the whole thing apart. So to do that, the end of the case has these two screws. That's what we've got to take apart next, and those look like they're going to be a little tough. Let's see what we can do. See if you get any kind of turn on them. Maybe we clamp the whole thing in a vise. You want to do that? How about that? Oh, you got it. There's your muscles. Well, that's a long bolt, huh? So how long is that? Does that go all the way to the top?
Yeah.
So that screw goes all the way in and threads into the top. So it clamps the top and the bottom together and pinches it. Yep.
Sturdy.
Little corrosion. No pitting, just some surface corrosion. That gives us an idea what we're going to deal with inside. All right, let's get over here. Let's see what you can do on the next one. All right.
That one's super easy.
That was super easy? Okay.
It's so stiff.
Should pull straight out. You know, it's gonna be a little tight, a little corrosion. That one doesn't have as much rust on it. This one, it's just got sort of some dirt and grime on it. So we'll have to clean those up. Now, what we need to do next, what's holding it together is this, and it's clamped on here with this nut, and there's an insulator. So remember, the electrical connection touches this post and the case. So they need to insulate that bolt where it goes through the case, otherwise there would be a short circuit. So we need to take this off that insulates this brass stud from the case. So these are important pieces that we need to put back in the same order. So nut, washer, nut, washer, and a fiber washer. And what happens is the electrical connector from the battery goes between this nut and this washer right here and gets clamped on. You took that off on the car.
It goes washer, washer, nut, washer, nut.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, now let's set these aside. Now we want to see if we can get that case open. How are we going to do that?
This big thing, this metal piece.
Yeah, how are we going to get, we got to split it right
We
here.
have to look around. So
Let's see if we can get a little hammer in. So let's try hammer and let's see if we can see it's opening.
Mm-hmm. You could probably put it on. Oh, there's a lot of dirt.
A lot of dirt's coming out.
Yep.
Yeah, we're getting some rust and dirt.
You can probably just put it on. Yep.
All right. So when we pull this apart,
Gotta be careful.
these brushes are going to move because the springs are there, and we're going to pull out a lot of rust.
So
So let's set this aside, and let's look at this. Now, what do we have here? What's this?
these are wires.
This is the armature.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the windings of the wires. And this is what?
The
Commutator.
commutator.
And then here's the axle. And you can see the kind of corrosion we're dealing with. It's not clean.
There's
right
a number.
here.
There's 0667, I think.
Where's that? Oh, on the plate, there's a number. It's probably a part number for that plate. So we've got a good bit of corrosion in here that we need to clean up. The commutator has a pretty substantial, let me put a cloth down for you. See if you can see that any better behind a white background. So the commutator has a pretty substantial lip on it where the brushes have been riding. So we may need to turn this on a lathe and smooth it out. And each one of these little brass lines or copper lines is one of those little segments that makes an electrical contact. So look how many coils of wire there are. Every little plate's a different coil of wire. That's a lot. Okay, so let's set this aside and let's look at the case. So inside, what do you see?
I see the magnet things, the magnet, whatever they're called.
These are the stator plates.
Stator plates, and then there's the bushings.
Brushes down in the bottom. So
some springs, the springs.
Okay, so what we've got to do, let's see if we can take this plate off the bottom. So let's get a long screwdriver and see if we can tap and separate that. Hang on, so a longer screwdriver. Let's see if we can go in and not hit a brush. I just want to get right on the case. Okay, there we go. Can you hold on either side of this? On either side, 2 hands. Yeah, like that. All right, ready? All right, did it come apart? Okay, nice and slow. What's keeping us? So what we have is this bolt, this post. So there's a plastic insulator. Okay, and we also have some wires, huh? Okay, what are the wires connected to?
The wires are connected to the brush.
So this brush has a wire connected to one of the stator plates.
So we have to take out the stator
And
plates.
same thing on the opposite side. No, let's take these brushes out. Let's do that.
I don't know.
So let's take out that brush right there. So let me see the screwdriver. We're gonna pop this spring up.
Don't break it.
I know, I don't want to break it. Tell you what. Let me get a hook and hook it. Hang on. So I'm going to get a hook, and I'm going to hook this spring, and I'm going to pull it back. You pull that brush out. Can you grab that wire and pull that brush straight towards you, straight up? And wiggle, 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 straight up. There you go. All right, we got one, right? Now let's roll it over and do the other side just like that. All right, get your head back a little bit so people can see. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna pull the spring. Now you're gonna wiggle that wire. Wiggle, wiggle. Straight up. Straight up. That's tough to do. Oh, you got it. All right.
Check it out.
Right. So here's our base plate. So we have, we've taken out 2 brushes, and then we still have 2 brushes in here. Those brushes ground straight to the base plate, right? And each brush has a little coily spring that I tried to pry off, but I wasn't able to pry off. So we'll take a look at that. And then in the center here, this is one of the bushings. This is one of the oil-light bushings that is all corroded that we need to clean up and maybe replace. So those are our brushes, and see how the springs work when I push on it? So now let's look at the case. In the case, we have 2 brushes that you were able to extract, and they are connected by a wire to these stator coils on the side.
Magnets, pretty much.
Right, and then this electrical post had an insulator.
Plastic insulator.
And it connects to one of these stator plates. And let's look at the other side. It connects to this stator plate, And if you look, it connects to that field wire. And if you look, that wire is connected here by an electrical connection across up here. And these two are connected to an electrical connection across up here. All right, so our next thing to do to get this apart is we need to get these screws out so we can take these plates off so we can finish cleaning it up. That's going to be hard to do. We're going to set this up in the vise and do it. Okay, so on the base plate, we've got 2 brushes left. Let's pull those brushes out. I'm going to take the spring, and I'm going to use the hook, and I'm going to pull the hook, spring back, and you're going to pull that brush out with your fingers. Ready? Okay, that's out. Now let's spin it around the other way. These are going pretty well. Now here I've got some wires in the way a bit. Let me see if I can... Hang on, there. Did you get it? Yeah. This one has sort of 2 wires. The wire kind of captures in the spring. So now we need to see how we get the spring off. The spring is captured in there. Let's see if I can... Oh, look, I can unwind it and then lift the spring out. And there is our spring. That's what it looks like. So let's see. You want to see if you can do them? Here. See if you can unhook a spring, pull it, and bring it over the top. Don't pull too hard. Now bring it over. Maybe hook it from the bottom. And pull. Pull. Now lift it over the top. You got it. Lift, lift, lift. Now release it. Now. All right, let's hold that up and let's see what that looks like. Here. There's another one. All right, let's do that. We got 2 more. There. So far, 3 of them are intact. Now that one's tougher because it's got 2 wires. Be gentle with the wires. Probably go, lay the brush down. Yep, and try to get in between the 2 wires right there. Hook in between the 2 wires. Just hook the spring. Don't hook the wire. Yeah, so this one's tougher. Let me show you. What we want to do is we got to unhook it from the wire as well. So I'm going to reach under the spring and I'm going to try to avoid the wire. And I'm going to go around the mount and the wire. There. See, I went around the whole thing. Now, it's a little wiggly. Here, let's see if we can maybe loosen this a little more. Here. Let's try that now. Can you look at it and see what it's caught on?
Oh, I see. So, on the other ones, it's bent together, clamping the metal.
Oh, these 2 are bent together?
It's clamping the metal. It's clamping the spring together so you can't pull it out.
I see the 2 spring mount points are pinched. These mount points, this one was tight. This one's very loose. That one's tighter. So maybe we can just spread them apart a little.
It's just clamped.
So if we take a screwdriver and try to go in between them. There, I spread them apart a little. Now see if you can lift the spring. Yep. So there is our last spring. Okay, so that's 4 springs. 1, 2, 3, 4.
And we have the brushes out.
And then we have the brushes, and the brushes are, it looks like they're clamped and soldered to this base plate, right? Or at least clamped to the base plate. They both have 2 wires on them, which looks to be redundancy. And then this is otherwise very dirty. Now the last thing is this top cap. We want to take this cap off So I got an idea for that. Hang on. So I have a brass punch that will fit in there, and we're gonna just try to
don't break it.
tap this down on the bench. See how it moved?
No.
See the gap right there? Right here?
Okay.
Let's do that. Well, and it's off. So this is just
dirty.
This is just a sheet metal cap that some people put lubrication in. If that's grease in there, it's pretty hard and crusty. It's got some dried up grease in there, some gross dried up grease. And then this has our bushing that runs around the perimeter that we think is probably worn out. So let's do this. Let's move our springs. Let's bring our commutator back over. Let's put this in the bushing. That is
the nuts.
That's a lot of play. Look at that.
Dad, where are the nuts?
We don't need the nuts.
No, but where are they?
That's a lot of play in that bushing. I think we definitely need a new bushing. That would be really tough to spin well. So we definitely need a new bushing. The brushes, I don't know. They've got a good bit of wear. They're significantly rounded. It might be time for brushes if we're going this far. And once we get the stator apart, we'll see what the brushes look like there. Well, let's take a look at them. Here are the brushes on the stator. These two, similar, fairly rounded, which is normal because they would round and curve themselves to the commutator. So these are going to be tough screws to get out. We got to work on that. Let's set up in the vise and work on that. All right, we're going to do some freehand camera work to show you these stator plates. That is a lot of surface corrosion. You can see the light through the window coming behind us. So that could be a lot to do with how difficult it was to spin. But we know that bushing, the one bushing we tested, is worn out. Let's look at this bushing right here. See if you can wiggle that plate. Not spin, see if you can rock it. Grab the two horns and rock. Up, down. Like this. There we go. So that's got some play in it too. Not nearly as much, but if we're going this far, we'll take the Bendix apart. This type of a Bendix has a cotter pin, and I don't know if that unscrews or if I have to compress this mainspring. We're gonna check that out in a little bit. Okay, so before we take apart the stator and the field coils, let's take a look. We've got an electric meter tested on resistance. It's set on 20 ohms, 200 ohms, very low. We touch the together. Lowest reading we get is like a 0.5. So let's just test our case on either side of our case. Basically 0.5. So we're getting a good reading on the case. So now let's try the case to this post, the electrical post, right? Do I have a short? Is the field windings shorted to the case? And the answer is they are not. I do not have a short. So now let's try to the brush. I'm going to hold right here on the brush. I'm going to hold it here. You do that one on the post, and I'm going to do it on the brush. So don't block our, there we go. You're holding on the post. I'm going to hold on the brush. We go down to like, scratch it a little bit right in the surface. Press down hard. Scratch and press down hard. There we go. So we're going into like 1 ohm, really low. Now let's check the other brush. You do the same thing. Scratch and hold. And I'm going to scratch and hold. All right, so 0.4. So we're getting good readings our field windings are isolated from the case correctly, and they have good contacts with the brushes right now. Now, the one thing that I notice about this particular is it doesn't have the fish paper. It doesn't have, oh, wait a minute, it does. Here is the paper. So here is the isolation paper. Let's pull this up and out. So this isolation paper helps insulate. Hang on, we don't want to tear it because we're going to reuse this, even though it's dirty. We're going to reuse it. Oh, we got another fiber washer here. We missed that one. Or maybe a metal washer. Let's put that in our dish. And then we do have the paper that insulates the field windings from the case. So we're gonna, even though that looks a little crusty and dirty, we're probably gonna reuse that. Well, it doesn't go all the way around. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and set this up in the vise, and we're probably gonna use an impact screwdriver and see if we can whack these out. With the amount of rust on those plates, it's gonna be tough, but that's what we're gonna try. That's up next. All right, so we've got the case in our vise, and we have wire brushed this a little bit. Let's maybe put some, well, let's just try it like this. So we know we're never gonna get it with a little screwdriver. First off, I don't have a screwdriver that big. We're never gonna be able to turn it. So we're gonna use an impact driver. We have it on left-hand turn, so left is the way we wanna go. We're gonna hold it like this. Luke's gonna, I tell you what, how about I hit it?
I've never.
We're gonna try a small hammer first.
Please don't hammer.
Here, I'm gonna hold it. I'm gonna hold it.
Don't.
You're gonna watch. See if it turns.
I saw sparks.
All right. I don't think I'm getting much. Let's try a bigger hammer.
I'm putting on safety glasses. And it says warning, wear safety glasses.
Now we're gonna try sledgehammer. Here we go. Ready?
Don't hit your hand out.
We're not moving, are we?
Barely even turned.
Okay, so we put a little coil on it, and we're gonna use the bit. We've got the biggest bit we've got. We might have one bigger one. And we're gonna try to whack on it some. I'm gonna counter turn it a little, and we're not getting any movement out of that. We have a couple of other bits. Let's see, that fits really nicely. That fits loosely. This one, which has sort of a square in the center, really fits nicely. Let's try that one. So this is more of a pointed Phillips bit, and this one is blunter with a square tip. So let's try that in here, because I know the purchase, how it bites, is really critical. So there we go. Just keep whacking, and it came out. Pretty pleased with that. Here's our corroded plate holding in that field coil. But that is a success. We will try it again. Let's rotate 90 degrees. Let's repeat what we did, which is scrape. I'm going to scrape this out. And then we're going to take some coil. I don't know if this is going to make any difference given how these are fixed in there, but we're going to do it. And frankly, if you look at this, there is coil around the edge, but that might have rolled in after it broke free. Man, that got wedged on there. That really did. That is now really embedded in there. In fact, I may need a device to get that off. Or, well, I can't do that. I thread it back in here. And there we go. Oh, you're shaking everywhere. All right, so we are going to do that again. We liked all of that. Took a lot of pounding. Stand this straight up and down. We're going to hold this. Do you look at my big mug? You're going to watch it turn. Vice gets loose. Counter turn. Go. Just takes a lot of hits. I figure I got nothing to lose on this starter, because if I can't get these apart, I'm never going to get this thing cleaned up. So maybe it seems aggressive. It feels aggressive. This one I can, the plate is not dropping out. There we go. It certainly feels aggressive, how much pounding I'm doing. Again, there we go. In the end, these are looking fine. There's no damage to them. Let's rotate 90 degrees. Again, pick this clean.
It works.
It works. Look, there's two of them. You want to watch? It takes a lot of pounding. It's really noisy. I go ahead and put some coil on it. Some of the penetrant.
I'm gonna stand back here.
Okay, you stand back there. I got the bigger bit. I found a bit that fits better. Mm-hmm. I put it in.
And you can smash it.
And I just smash it. It takes maybe 10 or 20 smacks. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. 6. Taking fewer hits now. Again, let's push that plate down. There it is. Look how corroded it is.
Jeez.
All right, we're going to have to clean all of these up. So I thread that back in, and then the bit's really stuck in there. So what I do is this will tap out again. My screw is fine. So we have one more, buddy. All right, now this is the one. This one might fight us the most. This is the one with the most corrosion. This must be the top of the starter when it's in the car, I guess, or close to it. So this one we're going to scrape out like we have.
Wait, where did I even put my keys for my box?
Then we're going to do some coil. And get our impact driver. Counter turn it and there we go. I didn't count, but that got it. Let's push that plate down. Again, there's the kind of corrosion we're dealing with. We're gonna do that. We'll give it a little tap to get it undone, and that is the 4 plates So what we're going to do is we're going to draw this out, this assembly, all together. And look at the corrosion we've got. I got an exposed wire here that concerns me.
26 inches.
But otherwise, pretty good. I can probably, we'll have to brush this off, that exposed wire. Maybe I can wrap with some cloth, if that is even a wire. Maybe that's more cloth, I'm not sure. But we'll set this aside. Now let's take a look at our case. You can see how much rust and corrosion. It's interesting, there's factory paint under where the plate was. But this is now something we can really clean. Maybe we'll sandblast it. Probably what we'll do. We'll take it to the sandblaster and sandblast it up. Really make it look
shiny.
Really make it look shiny and good, right? All right. All right, so our next step is to take the Bendix apart. So this spins. We know this bushing is not great. We've got that much place. Not too bad, not as bad as the backside. So what I've done is I've got this lightly clamped in the vise. The bottom of the armature is resting here, and I've got it lightly clamped in the vise. And it looks to me like this top piece is threaded on. So if we take this cotter pin out, we should be able to unthread this and then disassemble this whole Bendix. So that's what we're going to try to do. Okay, so here we go. We are going to try to pull this cotter pin out of the top of this Bendix. So let's,
Don't break it.
well, we're going to replace, cotter pins are sacrificial. You replace them, you don't reuse them. See how it's bending over? So when I bend it straight, it might not survive. Then we pull it out.
I have pliers in my toolbox.
These might be your pliers. Here, take a look. Here's what a cotter pin is, bud. All right, so now we think this unscrews.
Pliers.
Yep. And I don't have a wrench that precisely fits that, so I'm going to use this. It's not perfect, but we're going to use it.
So can I do whatever I want with this?
And I believe this might be reverse thread. It is reverse thread. It is reverse thread. Now my concern is that this is going to go flying in the air. Let's give me a rag over there. Okay, now I don't know what level of force this is under. Well, it feels pretty loose actually already. Let me keep going. Oh yeah, there's no compression anymore. All right, so it's unscrewing by hand. There's no force, so it's not going to go flying on us. So that's reverse threads. That's our plate. It has a little lip, and then the spring lifts off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay us down on the bench so I can lay these pieces out so you guys can see them, okay? Let's do that.
Burn it down, house.
So we're going to document. We're going to take this apart, document the parts. So we have this nut, castellated nut, reverse threads. Then we have the big main spring. Then we have a spacer. Then we have part of the Bendix. So you have to untwist this off, and it's got the spiral cut on the inside and the straight cut on the outside. Then this pulls straight. I guess they could come off together. Man, it's hard to get off because of the goopy, slimy grease. So that's the other part of the Bendix. Then I have another spacer that fits over this collar. So because this slides all the way down and hits that shoulder. So I have another spacer. Then I have, this is the return spring. This is the spring that pushes the starter gear back into its resting point.
Spacer.
Then I have a shouldered bushing that this return spring rides on, and this spacer rides on. So that is just sort of the shoulder that the return spring rides on. I'm going to put this sort of over here, so we got a line and a line. So now what do I have left? This should come off. It's not. Maybe. I have a lot of resistance there. Let's get a hammer. Let's take this hammer and we're gonna go our gap is opening up and it's coming off. I think that's our bushing, and it's just corroded. Let's rotate. Yeah. So let's take a look. This is our plate. It's a little hard to see, but man, that is some gross and some wear. So that's our plate. And then this is the shaft. And this is just dirt, dirty grease. So this all needs to be cleaned up. So what we have is our oil light bushing here that needs to be pressed out, cleaned up. We clean it up, we'll see what kind of slop we have. But I think if we're ordering the other bushing, we'll order this one, press it out. I think this is a stepped bushing, so it pushes from this side. You can see the edge. If you look at the other side, it's a larger, a little hard to see, but I think it has a shoulder. I'll let you know after we'll get it all cleaned up and we'll look at it before we press it out. So that's it. That's as far apart as we're going to disassemble this. I think we're going to clean it, and I think we're going to put this in a lathe, and we're going to try to turn the commutator, and then we're going to clean everything else up sparkling clean, put new bushings, put new brushes, turn the commutator, and see if we know what we're doing. So that's it until we get cleaned up. All right, let's take a look at how it looks after one round of cleaning. So this is the Bendix end of the starter, the armature. This is where the bushing rides. It looks discolored, but there are very few little scores you can feel in it. Here's the cap, a little hard to see, that has that oil light bearing in it. This, however, feels terrible. It feels terrible. It has a lot of scores to it. So we will get a new bushing. This goes on, there's a large boss that protrudes on one side and a smaller one. The large boss goes in against the bearing surface here of the armature. So it goes on like this. And it doesn't go together smoothly. There's clearly, once it seats, it's fine. There we clearly got dirt in there, and now it's got ridges and things. It doesn't have a huge amount of play, but it has enough. And it does spin well, and I could probably oil that bushing enough. But the other end is worse. So I'm going to replace both of them. It is not easy to get this off. even though it's totally clean. And I think that's just because there's scores and ridges. There, it shows you how hard it is in those bushings. So that's going to get replaced. So let's look at the other end. So I've cleaned up the commutator end. This is really nice. This surface is really nice. The commutator, we talked about the wear. We're probably going to chuck this in the lathe and mill this. I have a lathe. I've not done any lathe work. This will be the first project. So that'll be kind of fun. And the worst thing that happens is I totally destroy the starter, so I'll have to get another one. Here's the base plate. We've done an initial round of cleaning. Not perfect, but vastly improved. We're going to make it better. The bushing looks okay from this side. From this side, you can see really excessive wear. I don't know. It's almost right here. Let me get some fuzz off. Right here, that bushing is almost paper thin. It is worn out of round right there. It's a little hard to tell, but it is out of round. And the real telling thing is if you put it on and, I mean, that is just, depending on which way you're rocking it, an atrocious amount of play. I mean, there's no way. It does spin, but, I mean, it's just wobbling that out. The armature's moving, and I don't want the armature to crash into the stator or the windings. So we're going to replace that. That seems like a no-brainer. I'm a little torn on the brushes. The brushes are pretty good. They're not as long as they could be. They're in good shape. They've got the factory connections. And I'd have to open up those connections if I did it. I'd have to open up these factory connections. And I don't know. I may order a set and I may do the bushings first and then put it all together and see how it goes. I mean the bushings first and not the brushes, and see how it goes. Not sure. I do want to get this a little cleaner. You know, look, I'm not looking for show quality, but we've gone this far. Let's make it a little bit cleaner. The end cap, it's sort of corrosion. Probably quick throw this in the sandblaster to get it the rest of the way, or maybe a Dremel wire wheel. This goes over and snaps on the end, and it's just a friction fit. And the idea is you can get a screwdriver behind it and pop it off. Why would you want to do that? Well, once this is in place, there is a square drive on the end of it. So I guess if the starter gets wedged, like the Bendix gets wedged against the ring gear, and you just need to turn it a little to free it up. That's what that's for, I think. Interesting concept. I'm gonna clean it up and I'll friction fit it on there, and that's what we'll have. So now let's look at the Bendix end. So we know that this plate goes on here. We'll go ahead and do that just so you get the good visual, because that's what you're gonna normally see, right? You're gonna normally see this enclosed. So the first thing is this stepped bushing, let's call it, and it slides on here. Nice, easy, smooth. Then you have the return spring. Then you have this. This is actually stepped as well as an internal, if you can see it. It has an internal lip, so it actually goes over that spring and then goes down. Then we have 4 splines on this, 4 splines on the inside for the twist, and they fit these 4 splines, so they slide on. And this goes down and it stops at this shoulder here. So let's, if this shoulder spacer, this is what sets that depth. If that's not there, this could go down and really wedge to the end of the machining. So shoulder, return spring, stepped bushing. And this stepped bushing, the smaller dimension is the size of this bushing. So it rides over that, captures that spring. Then this goes on. And I guess there's an orientation. I guess these splines are not universal. I'm not really clear on that. It seems to ride smoother. Yeah, just yeah. So anyway, so that's its resting point. Then you have the starter gear, which twists onto there. They could go on together. You do not have to wait. You can nest them together, and they could go on together. There is no reason to do them separately other than grease and grime are going to usually separate them. Then you have a stop collar. Now, what is this going to stop? Well, when this turns, it stops its return action. Remember, this is a return spring. After this engine starts, it's going to send this backwards, right? Then you have the mainspring. Now, the mainspring is kind of funny. I think the idea is that when it returns after the engine starts, it's going to return with such force that it's going to hit this spring. And I think that's partly it, but also as it goes down and engages, when it twists against the engine, you see how it's launching? See how it's launching the this lower twist off? This mainspring would prevent that twist. It would prevent that launch, and it would cushion it a little and cause the engine rotation. So I don't know. I think that's probably more where that spring is working, is this action, just as it's engaging the ring gear on the flywheel. And then we have, of course, the reverse thread here. Now, this particular Lucas starter that I have has this reverse thread. Some of them you press down and there's a collet. Some of them you press down and there's a circlip. Just different styles. This one, I'm lucky that I have the thread on, so it's very easy for me to take apart. I think for some people that would be much harder to take apart. So this is all much cleaner. I'll clean a little bit more, and I don't know what lubrication I'm going to use on it. I'll use something. But I mean, I think this is all great. And I just new cotter pin, and we're done. So 2 bushings, 2 of the oilite bushings, and that's it. Now let's set this aside, and then we have the iron plates that hold the stator windings. And these, Luke did a really good job, just hand wire brushing these. I think that's enough, although we're going to sandblast the case, so we may sandblast these. We also have a tumbler. We may put these in a tumbler. I'm not sure. We'll get those cleaned up probably a little bit more. Now, the last thing, which we haven't touched, is the case. This we're definitely going to sandblast. We want to sandblast it and paint it. The inside, a little hard for you guys to visualize with the light. Lots of rust, lots of crust. Interestingly, the factory paint is still there where the iron plates where the stator were. That's still the factory paint. So really this is just some corrosion. So we're going to sandblast this whole thing and paint it up. We need to keep these edges unpainted so that we get the ground contact that we need, I believe. So we won't paint the ends, but we'll probably paint the inside and paint the outside. So we still have that to do. And what I haven't done is I haven't touched this yet. This we're going to brush off with like a nylon brush. Be gentle with it and check it all out. This was the one lead I was concerned about here. I think that's raw copper right there showing. We may just wrap that with a little bit of tape just to make sure. I'm not quite sure, but a lot of this is just dirt that just needs a little bit of brushing. Let me get you a brush and we'll see. So again, yeah, you know, all that rust that's inside the case. I am not going to get too carried away with this. I think it's just sort of the corrosion built up on it. And we'll see. This is sort of a fabric wrapped, like a cloth tape wrapped winding, and I don't want to get too carried away. If I just agitate it a little, let's look at a light wire brush. There's a light wire brush. Let's do some light. Again, I don't want to tear this cloth. And there I might have just abraded it, see? So I don't like that. I kind of like the toothbrush. It's clearly caked on and built up. This is built up pretty good. So we're gonna get it a little cleaner. I think that's enough. You can see I can scrape the corrosion off, so we'll do a little bit of work on it. This is not gonna look spectacular. This is gonna be the functional part, but that's a lot of corrosion built up on it that should all sort of mechanically scrape off. These are windings right here that are exposed. Those are the copper wires exposed. So again, I have these spots that are exposed, and I'm gonna have to, there's some there, right there, that are exposed. My guess is that moisture got in here and got this wet, and it rusted, and this stuck to the inside of the case. So we may have to do a light wrapping. I don't know that there's enough room to do much, but I just need to make sure they're isolated from the case. Again, the brushes are here. They are soldered onto this winding. This one has sort of modern electrical tape, so someone's been in here before. They may never have taken these stator plates out, but they clearly were in here and wrapped this wire. Who knows what the story is with that. Again, a little bit of that corrosion. So that's roughly what we have. The only really thing left, except for a little bit of hardware, is this band. We'll throw this in the sandblaster. Just take a minute, sandblast it up, paint it. It'll look pretty. That's it. So I think we're gonna give it a whirl and try to get the starter rebuilt and put the original starter back in. Yes, I know there are high torque starters available. Rebuilt starters from Moss are currently $550. This starter is a rebuilt starter. I send them this one back, a $300 core. So these are clearly something that is rebuilt. Looks to me like the parts are about 30 bucks for brushes and bushings, are about 30 bucks. So it'd be 250 bucks to me, not counting shipping, for a rebuilt one of these, or $30 plus a little bit of shipping if we try it ourselves. And so that is worthwhile to try. That's what we will do. Okay, where do we stand? So I got this sandblasted. You can see the corrosion, but I think that it came out pretty great. I'm gonna paint it next. A little easier to read now. Lucas, there's your number, 25550A, sizes M418G, V174, and there you can see the 4 of 60 better. I think that's the date code in 12 volt. Again, a little corrosion pitting, but I think it's gonna paint up fine and be great. The windings are a different story. They are intact, they test fine, but we have some bare wires here, here, and here. I sort of lightly brushed some of the corrosion off this paper tape. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut these tape off of these, and I'm gonna wrap it with some electrical tape here and here and there. These are good. They're gonna go back in fine. You can see some of that corrosion. And that's all we're gonna do. I have ordered brushes. I have not tried to pry these open yet. But I'm hoping to put new brushes in them. Case bolts, all I did was wire brush them and then sand them a little. There's some corrosion on them. I'm gonna reuse them. Here's our big problem. So our base plate. So it's all cleaned up nicely. I've ordered bushes. The springs go on and they fit. If you look at a raw spring, it has this center that has to be fixed, and the way they fix it, you can see on this one, it goes between those two brass tabs, and then you load it up. So there you go. Now, when you saw me try to get this apart, there was one I couldn't get apart, and I put a screwdriver in, I pried it a little. Well, that was just enough to weaken it, and the tab broke off. So I don't have the two tabs. This is the tab that broke off, and that is really frustrating. I don't have a good way to fix this. It needs to sit on there like that. I'm going to epoxy it. I'm going to put a blob of epoxy at the bottom and at the top and leave that slot open. If you look at the way these go, there's one. It has a lot of room at the bottom. I could totally encase it with a mountain of epoxy, and I can put a epoxy at the top, and it would do what it needs to do. So that's what we're going to try. I don't think any kind of soldering or brazing will work. I don't think I could do it and be successful. So we're going to try epoxy, maybe JB Weld or something. So we'll try that and let you know. Okay. So we've got two new bushings here. They're soaking in oil. They've been soaking in oil overnight. These are oil light bushings. Let's take a look at this one, the littler one. Here it is. It's been soaking in oil. All right, so we've got the top of the starter. The shaft goes through like this, and we need to press the bushing, this bushing, into there. You can either press from this side or the other side. I don't think it makes much of a difference.
And as long as it goes in.
As long as it goes in.
Where's that kit?
Here, it's kind of started. I don't think we're going to hammer it. I think we're going to press it with the vise. So we want it to go in straight.
It's going in.
Mm-hmm. Let's back it up and look. Looks pretty good. It's a little bit sticking out there and a little bit recessed there, so maybe we'll tap it a touch, right? Or I tell you what, I know what we can do. We wanted to press it till it's flush. You know what we have that's the same size?
What?
The old bushing. So now we can line that up.
Soon.
So now we're just flush.
Mm-hmm.
And here we're just recessed. Let's go a little more. So we go just below the surface. Now we're just below the surface. Both sides. Got the new bushing. It's oiled up. Mm-hmm. Let's try. Okay. Do it. Go ahead. Wiggle. Spin. Spins nicely. How much play do we have? Just a fuzz. That's really nice. Look how nice that spins. I think that starter's going to spin nice. Now we have to do, now we remember what we have on the other side. Let's turn it around. Let's see. This is unrepaired. So that's what it looks like on the back side. Here's what it looks like on the front. It's a little hard to see, but it gets super thin right there. Let's see what kind of play we have. It's got that kind of play. There's way more play in some directions than others. So we're going to push this out, and we've got the new bushing in there. All right, so let's work on that. Okay, so we have the plate. We have it in the vise, sitting on the soft jaws. We're just going to close it to give it a little more support. It's basically flat on the bottom. We're going to use a socket that is slightly smaller than the bushing. And then we're going to go tap, tap, tap lightly, and we're going to see how this goes. Go ahead, Luke, give it a tap. A little bit harder. No, it's not moving. Let's give it a little bit harder of it. Let's see. It's kind of mushroomed out. Let me try a slightly different one.
Does that fit?
Yeah, that fits. Let's try that. And this extension. Put like this. All right, we're going to try this socket. Right on there. Go ahead and all right, you got to hit it harder.
Okay.
My turn?
I don't want to hit your hand.
Yeah, I hit you. There we go. Here. So we started moving it. All right. Go ahead, Luke. Give
I
it.
think I pressed the button. Is it still playing?
You can hold this and tap. Okay?
Is it still playing?
Yep. Hold straight up and down. Give it some taps. You got it, it's going. Why don't you hop up on this tool?
Can you hold it?
You need to get closer, or are you close enough?
Okay, closer. Okay.
It's okay. There we go. Pushed it out. Nice and clean. Looks good. Here's the bushing that came out.
Where's the new one? Here's the new one.
And here's the new one. You see the thickness of the sidewall, if you can see the difference. Okay. So now we've got the old bushing with a lot of wear right here, and the new one. So if we put the old one on, it rattles a lot. Let's try the new one. It is nice and snug and smooth. Okay, so now we need to press the new one into this back plate. Now it's a little different this time because we can't, not as easy to put it in the vise. But maybe we could put it in the vise like this with a socket that helps hold it.
Except we need a long one.
So if we get it started, and then let's get a socket in here. You got a socket? Give me a, don't need a long one. Give me the big socket on the end there.
This one?
No, the closest to you. Yeah, that one. Because it needs to be bigger than the bushings. Let's see if that. So we got a big socket. We put it there. Put it against here. And let's see if that will close up. Oh, it's going right in. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see what that looks like. Just below the surface, or flush. I think that looks pretty good. What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
All right, now let's go back
And put it.
and see how that looks on here. Oops. Now put it on there and see how.
Like this?
Yeah, sure. Now what kind of wiggle do we have? Almost none. Much snugger. That should work much better, huh?
Spin? Is it spinning?
So this is the way it's going to go on. And it spins nicely. It's got a little play, more than the other side, but way better than it was. All right. No, we're not going to do, we're going to reuse the old brushes. So
there's two.
The last thing we've got to deal with is this, where it broke, this tab broke. I've epoxied that. I don't think that's going to hold, but we're going to try. See, I think we've got too much wiggle. I'm thinking about wrapping the top with wire
Dad, where's the other brushes?
and then epoxying the top. So let's try that. All right, after going completely insane, this starter turns, but when you tighten the case screws, it stops turning. It gets bound up, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. I've tried everything. Look at this case screw. As I turn it, I've got it loosened right now, so it's finger tight. Now look at this case screw. It's opening and closing because the shaft on this starter is bent. And when you clamp the case tight, the bushings, the new bushings, are perfectly in alignment and it binds up. But if I keep it just cracked, it will flop the case to follow the curve. This is not rebuildable.